He was just the neighbor's kid. Until I saw him standing in my kitchen, and I realized I'd stopped seeing him as a kid at all. My name is Elise. I'm 46. Married. No children. Not by accident, not by tragedy, just life, as it unfolded. One year at a time, like pages in a novel you didn't choose, but keep reading because the prose is quiet and decent and doesn't demand too much of you. We live in a cul-de-sac where everything stays the same. The trees bloom in the same order every spring. The neighborhood committee still argues about mailbox heights. Mrs. Chan's rose bushes win first place every June like it's written in stone. We wave to each other out of habit more than warmth. It's a sweet little world, the kind that keeps its fences painted and its voices down after 9. Daniel and I bought this house 18 years ago. It was the only one we could agree on. I liked the light in the kitchen, he liked the garage. We made love in every room the first year, just to make it feel like ours. I remember laughing in the hallway with my hair sticking to the wall paint. That seems like a different version of myself now. A different kind of woman. One I let drift away without even noticing. Daniel still loves me, I think. In his way. The way you love an old record player. Reliable. Predictable. Sometimes it plays the tune just right, and you remember why you bought it. But most days, it's just background music. Something you turn on to make the silence less heavy. He leaves early. Comes home later than he used to. We eat dinner with the TV on and make small talk like polite strangers. We haven't fought in years, not because there's nothing to fight about, but because fighting would require energy. And energy is something we save for groceries, work emails, and remembering if the laundry was moved to the dryer. That's the rhythm of my days now. Or it was. Until Ben. Ben lived across the street. My neighbor's son. I saw him grow up the way you see people in passing through windows, across lawns, in the blur of summer afternoons. There was a time he was all knees and elbows, a mop of hair too big for his head, darting through sprinklers with his friends. He wore jerseys, scraped his knees, left skateboards in the middle of the street like hazards. I made him cookies once. When he was 10. Chocolate chip. His mom had forgotten it was his birthday. Not out of cruelty, just chaos. She was like that. A bit scattered. I brought over the cookies on a paper plate and handed them to him while his friends played video games inside. He smiled, a missing tooth right in the center. Said thanks like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. I remember thinking, he'll be handsome one day. Not in a strange way, just an observation. Like how you know a sapling will become a beautiful tree. Eventually. Then he disappeared into adolescence, as boys do. Popped up now and then. Prom pictures, graduation banners, car washing in the driveway with his shirt off, and music too loud. But I never looked. Not really. He went to college. I forgot where. We waved at holidays. He helped carry folding chairs when the neighborhood threw barbecues. Sometimes, I'd ask what he was studying. He'd answer politely, and I'd nod like I was listening. Then years passed, and I stopped thinking of him at all. Until that morning. Daniel had left the night before for a fishing trip with his brother. 3 days of coolers and lake air and terrible reception. He kissed my cheek out of habit before he left, told me not to wait up, and didn't take his phone charger. I slept badly, the kind of sleep that's more tossing than resting. My back ached and my pillow smelled wrong. When I finally gave up on rest, the sky outside was still pale, the color of unripe fruit. I padded barefoot to the kitchen, robe hanging loose, hair tied back in one of those knots that serves more as surrender than style. I wasn't thinking of anything in particular, just coffee, maybe toast. The house was still. My mother was staying with us, helping a friend recover from surgery across the street. I figured she'd still be asleep. I didn't expect him. Then, standing in my kitchen, holding a mug, I froze. He turned fast, almost spilled the coffee. Sorry, he said. Your mom said I could let myself in. She's still asleep. I was just making coffee. I blinked, tried to assemble the words. Then I remembered. He'd been coming over some mornings to check in on his mom. My mother had offered him coffee once, and I suppose they'd formed some kind of quiet routine. I hadn't seen it happen. I'd been at work, or upstairs, or somewhere else. It's okay, I managed after a beat too long. I just didn't expect anyone. I know. I should have knocked. He wasn't a boy anymore. That's what struck me first. His height wasn't new, I'd seen it at a distance before. But there was something else. The way he stood. Still, confident. His shoulders broader. His hands bigger. He held the mug like he owned the moment, like the room belonged to him just as much as it did to me. He looked at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. And something flickered. Nothing loud. Just the tiniest shift under the skin. We sat in the kitchen after that. He poured coffee for both of us without asking. Used the good mugs, the ones Daniel and I never touched. I don't even remember when I last poured coffee for someone else in this house. I wrapped the robe tighter around myself, more out of instinct than modesty. My hair was frizzy from sleep. My eyes puffy. I hadn't brushed my teeth yet. I should have excused myself, should have gone upstairs and let the silence fill the room. But I didn't. I stayed. We talked about nothing. The weather, his mother's recovery, my garden that hadn't bloomed right this year. The air smelled like coffee and early morning. You look tired, he said. I smiled without smiling. Didn't sleep well. Same. He didn't ask why. I didn't either. The quiet between us was unusual. Not awkward. Not loud. Just deliberate. At one point, I noticed his eyes linger on my hands. I was fidgeting with the ring on my finger, the one that had started slipping off more easily these days. I only wear it out of habit now. I thought about taking it off, just to see what would happen. But I didn't. He didn't stare. That's not the right word. He observed. Like he was learning something. I should have felt uncomfortable. But I didn't. I felt awake. He left before my mother came down. Quietly. Like he knew the moment was a delicate thread that might break if touched. At the doorway, he turned back. Not all the way. Just enough. Our eyes met. No words. Just a beat too long. And then he was gone. I stood there, holding my mug. The light through the window had changed, stronger now, cutting across the table in sharp lines. But everything else, dimmer. As if the room had exhaled something I hadn't noticed we were holding. I told myself it was nothing. Just a neighbor's son. Just an awkward morning. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way he stood in that kitchen like the air belonged to him. Like time had folded itself inward for just a few minutes. Like I wasn't invisible. Not desired. Not admired. Just seen. It's such a small thing, isn't it? But when you've gone without it for long enough, it feels dangerous. Like something that might break you open if you're not careful. And something inside me whispered, "Careful won't save you now." The next day, I made sure to wake earlier. I told myself it was to water the plants before the sun hit too hard. Or maybe to enjoy the quiet before my mother came downstairs with her crossword and passive remarks about the state of my pantry. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't about the garden or the peace. It was the maybe that he'd show up again. And he did. At 7:46, I heard the side gate squeak. I didn't rush. I didn't make noise. I simply moved to the kitchen with a practiced slowness, robe adjusted, hair brushed this time, but not styled. I didn't want to look prepared, just not careless. He was already there when I stepped in. Back turned, pouring water into the kettle like it was his kitchen. Like he'd always belonged in that room. He turned when he heard me, and I caught the flash of recognition, not surprise, not apology. "Morning," he said. His voice was low, still scratchy with sleep. "Morning." I moved to the opposite side of the counter, trying to act as though this was normal. It wasn't. He wore a black t-shirt. Nothing special. But it clung to his shoulders in a way that demanded attention. I glanced once, then again. There was a tattoo on his left forearm, something abstract, lines woven like branches. I hadn't noticed it before. He caught me looking. Got it last year, he said simply, without shame or pride. I nodded, unsure of what to say. Does your mom know? He smirked. She pretends not to. We stood in silence as the kettle began to hum. Outside, the street was still. The world hadn't fully woken. But I had. Every inch of me felt alert in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine. When he handed me the mug, our fingers touched just briefly. But it was enough. Enough to make my breath hitch. Enough to wake something I hadn't let move in years. That day, I couldn't stop thinking. Not about the coffee. About the way he looked at me. Like he remembered something I hadn't realized I'd given. Like he wasn't looking at Mrs. Adler's daughter. Or Daniel's wife. Or Elise from across the street. He was looking at me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The fan spun slowly overhead, casting rhythmic shadows on the walls. Daniel had called to check in. The reception was bad. His voice broke in and out. "Love you," he said before hanging up. I said it back. Because it was the right thing to say. Because I do love him in the way people love their history. But my chest felt hollow afterward. I closed my eyes and saw Ben's hands. The way his thumb rested against the edge of the mug. The way his eyes didn't look away when they met mine. The warmth of that moment. Silent, heavy, unspeakable. I tossed. Turned. Pushed the sheets off, then pulled them back. At one point, I pressed my thighs together, slowly, subtly. Not out of lust, exactly. It wasn't about the heat. It was about presence. About being remembered in someone's gaze. About not disappearing into routine. It kept happening. He came more often. Sometimes he knocked. Sometimes he didn't. Always early. Always with that same quiet confidence, like he belonged to the morning itself. I started wearing lipstick to bed. Just a little. Just in case I woke up and didn't have time to fix anything. My mother never noticed. She was busy fussing over Ben's mother, busy being a friend, busy being just distracted enough to let something dangerous take shape around her. One morning, he stayed longer than usual. We talked about nothing again, the way the sunrise made everything look pink, how birds always sounded angriest just before dawn. He made a joke about how I used to scold him for leaving his bike in the driveway. I laughed. The sound startled me. I hadn't heard my own real laugh in weeks. He looked at me too long again. I didn't look away this time. Instead, I said something I hadn't meant to say. You've changed. His expression didn't shift. So have you. And there it was. A thread pulled tight between us. That night, it happened. I remember the clock blinking 11:04. Everyone else asleep. The world hushed. I padded downstairs in search of tea, some ritual to calm the ache beneath my skin. I didn't expect him, but there he was, standing at the back door, framed by the porch light. He knocked gently on the glass. I hesitated, then opened it. I left my phone charger, he said. Your mom's asleep. I know. I didn't want to wake her. I should have told him to come back in the morning. I should have closed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. He entered, walking softly, his presence too large for the room. I led him to the kitchen in silence. He retrieved the charger from the outlet by the fridge, then stood there, not moving. Our eyes met. The silence held. Then, slowly, he reached for my hand. Not abruptly. Not forcefully. Just a simple touch. His fingers closed around mine. Rough. Warm. I didn't pull away. I shouldn't be here, he said quietly. I know. But neither of us moved. My hand in his. The air between us dense with something unspoken and irreversible. I think about you, he said, so softly I wasn't sure if I imagined it. I closed my eyes. I know, I whispered. He stepped closer. I felt his breath first, then his fingers against my jaw. Then everything blurred. I don't remember who leaned in. I don't remember if it started with my mouth or his. All I know is that the moment folded around us, sharp and slow. The kiss wasn't urgent. It wasn't desperate. It was real. I dissolved. The boundary between thought and feeling disappeared. There was no plan. Just instinct. Just skin. Just warmth. I felt him everywhere. In the press of his hand against my lower back. In the way his breath faltered when I made a sound in the back of my throat. In the pause between every heartbeat. When we broke apart, I couldn't breathe. He looked at me like I was something holy. And I didn't want to be forgiven. I wanted to remember. By morning, I was shaking. The sun was too loud. The air tasted wrong. I sat in the shower, fully clothed, letting water soak into fabric until it clung like guilt. But I didn't cry. I just felt awake. He didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't need to. The memory was already enough to pull me under. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was addiction. And I knew, without a doubt, this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to name. Something I couldn't confess, but already couldn't live without. During the day, I was Elise, Daniel's wife, daughter of Evelyn, quiet neighbor with good table linens and a reliable smile. I folded towels. I stirred soup. I answered calls with a pleasant voice. I asked if anyone wanted seconds and laughed at the right times. I said things like, I'm fine and just tired, I guess. But at night, I became someone else. Not fully, not openly, but enough that I started double-checking if my phone was unlocked before setting it down. Enough that I looked at my reflection differently, not for lines or imperfections, but for recognition. I kept looking for the woman from the kitchen. The one who didn't pull away. I told myself it had been a mistake. A one-time weakness. But I already knew that wasn't true. The truth had sunk into my bloodstream like ink in water. There was no pulling it back. The next morning, he came again. I almost told myself I was surprised. But I had put on mascara before my robe. I had chosen earrings. Small ones. Delicate. The kind that sparkle just a little when you turn your head. He knocked this time. Polite. As if the door mattered anymore. When I opened it, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other. And I felt the tremble start, that slow rise of something beneath the skin. Not quite fear, not quite thrill. Just hunger. He stepped inside. No excuse today. No charger. No coffee. Just him. And me. And all the space we pretended we didn't know how to cross. I shouldn't stay, he said. I know. But neither of us moved. The kitchen held its breath. He reached for a mug and filled it with water. Held it like a shield. I watched his hands, the veins that moved like paths along his wrist. You're avoiding me, he said after a moment. I'm married. His eyes didn't flinch. I know. He took a sip of the water and set the mug down with too much care, as if afraid to make noise. You didn't regret it, he said quietly. I shook my head. Slowly. That's the problem. A pause. Then his voice, lower this time. Do you want me to leave? I opened my mouth. Closed it. I wanted to say yes. I also wanted him to touch me again. Slowly. Thoughtfully. Without hesitation. I don't know what I want, I said. But it wasn't true. I knew exactly what I wanted. I just didn't know who I was once I admitted it. That week, I tried harder than ever. To be her. The woman I used to be. I cooked Daniel's favorite meal. I organized the spice drawer. I even wore the soft gray nightgown he once said made me look like calm. He didn't notice. Not really. He kissed my shoulder one night, lightly, and I flinched without meaning to. He apologized. I smiled and said I was just cold. He accepted it. Like he always does. Daniel trusts the version of me he married. The one who gives more than she asks. The one who makes polite conversation and never forgets to water the garden. He doesn't see the new version, the one who touches her lips at night, remembering another mouth. The one who can't fall asleep without replaying a single look from across a kitchen counter. Ben was patient. He didn't push. But he didn't pretend either. One afternoon, he passed me on the sidewalk while walking his mother's dog. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just nodded. But the way his gaze lingered, it wasn't innocent. It wasn't casual. And I felt it. All the way down. That night, I dreamed of him. Not touching me. Just standing too close. Breathing. Watching. And I woke up gasping. He started texting. Not often. Just enough. Saw you outside today. White blouse. Suits you. You seemed sad. Were you? I'm not trying to make it worse. I just can't stop remembering the way you looked at me. I didn't reply. Not at first. Then I did. Don't. I can't. This can't happen again. He didn't argue. He only wrote, "Tell me you don't feel it too." I never answered that one. Because I didn't want to lie. I began lying to other people instead. My mother asked if I was sleeping well. I said yes. Daniel asked if I wanted to plan a trip in the fall. I said I'd think about it. The neighbors invited us to a cookout. I said we had plans. I started slipping out in the evenings, just to walk, just to think. But I always found myself drifting toward the house across the street. Not to go in, not to knock, just to pass by. Sometimes I'd catch a light flicker in an upstairs window. Sometimes I'd see his silhouette move. I told myself I was just walking, but I always wore perfume. And I always walked slower past his porch than anywhere else. One day, Daniel left his laptop open in the kitchen. Emails up. His schedule laid bare. Meetings. Trips. Dinners. Distant cities. I scrolled without permission. Not looking for secrets. Looking for absence. And I found it. Weeks booked in advance. Entire weekends where he wouldn't be home. And instead of feeling abandoned, I felt relief. That scared me. I closed the screen quickly and stood in the stillness of the kitchen. The same room where it had all started. The same place I'd once felt like a ghost. And now? Now I was burning. Ben came again. Late this time. After my mother had left. After Daniel was out of town. The doorbell didn't ring. He texted once, "I'm outside." I stood at the mirror in the hallway. My hair was loose. My blouse unbuttoned at the top. My chest rising faster than it should have. I walked to the door. Paused. Opened it. He didn't smile. He didn't ask. He just stepped inside. And this time, I didn't pretend to stop him. We stood in the dim of the entryway. Not touching. He spoke first. "I don't want to be a secret," he said. "You already are." He looked down. Then back up. "But I don't want to stay one." I didn't answer. Because in my soul, the answer was already there. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. The next morning, I looked in the mirror. Really looked. The light was soft, unforgiving in a kind way. My hair was messy. My skin wasn't young. My eyes were not wide or bright. But I saw something else. A pulse under the surface. A shadow behind the stillness. I stared for a long time. And for the first time in months, I asked myself a question I wasn't sure I wanted to answer. Who am I becoming? And would I ever be able to go back? There was no final fight. No slammed doors, no shouting, no names called. Just stillness. The kind of quiet that comes not from peace, but from inevitability. I hadn't seen him for 3 days. No messages. No knocks. Just space. I told myself I was relieved. But I felt like I'd misplaced something under my skin. That morning, I stood in the kitchen, same counter, same mug, same light. But I was different. I could feel it, like a tide that had gone out and left the bones of something behind. My mother had left for home 2 days ago. Daniel was due back that evening. I moved through the house like someone erasing evidence. But there was nothing to erase. Nothing had happened since the last time he stood too close. Except everything. Everything had happened. Inside. Silently. He texted me once. Just one line. "I'll be gone by tomorrow." I stared at it for minutes. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some things echo all on their own. I got dressed slowly that day. Not for seduction. Not for pretense. For clarity. A sweater I hadn't worn in years, soft, navy, familiar. I brushed my hair and let it fall as it wanted. No earrings. No perfume. No armor. Just presence. When I knocked on his door, I heard footsteps pause. Then the lock turned. Then silence. He looked the same, but his face was tired. Still beautiful. Still young in the way that hurts when you remember how far you've drifted from it. But older, too. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "You came," he said. "I didn't plan to." He stepped back. "But you did." I walked inside. He had a duffel bag half-packed by the couch. A jacket thrown over the armrest. A mug on the windowsill, still wet. I sat. He didn't. He paced for a minute, then stopped. "I'm not asking for anything. I know. I just didn't want to leave without saying something." I waited. He ran a hand through his hair. Then he looked at me like I was the only real thing in the room. "You made me feel like I wasn't invisible." The words hit harder than I expected. Because he wasn't the only one. We didn't touch. Not right away. We talked. Not about what we were. Just what was. About silence. About fire. About the ache of being seen only to be forgotten again. He said my name in a way that sounded like memory. I told him I didn't regret anything. He smiled. Not like someone pleased, but like someone relieved. And then we were close again. Not kissing. Just near. Like gravity. "I don't want to be your shadow," he said. My throat tightened. "You never were." He took my hand. No trembling. No urgency. Just skin. And stillness. And surrender. We didn't plan a next time. We didn't make promises. When I left, he walked me to the porch. The air was warm. The sun low. The world golden with almost evening. He touched my back, gently, as if closing a book. And I knew this was the last chapter, but not the last sentence. I returned home in silence. Daniel was back. His car in the driveway. The porch light on. I stepped inside. He was cooking. A simple meal. Pasta. A glass of wine already poured. He turned when he heard me. Smiled. "There you are," he said. "I missed you." I smiled back. Something inside me stirred. Not guilt. Not shame. Not longing. Something else. The shape of a woman learning how to breathe again. We ate together. Talked softly. He told me about the trip. I told him I'd read something beautiful. I didn't say what. He poured another glass. I washed the dishes. His hand found mine under the table later, gently. And I let it stay there. Not because I owed him something, but because I chose to. That night, I stood in the mirror again. Hair loose. No makeup. Nothing to prove. Just me. I looked into my own eyes and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Stillness. And in that stillness, presence. Not the kind that needs to be seen by someone else, but the kind that belongs to itself. The next morning, I woke before him. The light through the blinds was pale, quiet, kind. I stood in the kitchen again, same mug, same counter. And everything was different. Not because he was gone, but because I was here. Fully. Finally. He wasn't just the neighbor's son. He was the mirror I didn't know I needed. And when he looked at me, truly looked, He returned something I had long since buried. Not passion, not escape, myself. And now I begin again. Not with fire, but with breath, and the soft certainty that something had opened, and will never close the same way again.